And it drew near. And the chief priests and the religious scholars sought a way to kill Jesus, for they feared the people.
Then Satan took possession of Judas, who was called Iscariot, one of the 12. He went to the chief priests and the temple guards to discuss with them how he might betray Jesus. They were delighted and agreed to give him money. Judas accepted, then began to look for the opportune moment to hand Jesus over to them when the people were not present.
When the day of the feast of the unleavened bread arrived, when the Passover lamb was to be sacrificed, Jesus said to Peter and John with these instructions.
Go and make preparations for us to eat the Passover.
The disciples asked,
Where do you want us to prepare the dinner?
Jesus answered,
When you enter the city, a man will meet you carrying a jar of water. Follow him into the house he enters. Say to the owner of the house, Rabbi asks, where is the guest room where I can eat the Passover Seder with my disciples? And the owner will show you a large furnished upper room. Make the preparations there.
They went out and found everything as Jesus had told them, and they prepared the Passover.
when the hour had come, Jesus took a place at the table with the apostles. Jesus said to them,
I long to eat this Passover with you before I suffer. I tell you, I will not eat it again until everything is fulfilled in the reign of God.
Then taking a cup of wine, Jesus gave thanks and said,
Take this and share it among you. I tell you, I will not drink wine from now on until the reign of God comes.
Then Jesus took the bread and he gave thanks for it. He broke it and he gave it to them, saying,
This is my body, which will be given for you. Do this in remembrance of me.
Jesus did the same with the cup after supper and said,
This cup is the new covenant in my blood, which will be poured out for you. Look, the hand of my betrayer is at this table with me. The chosen one is following the appointed course. But woe to the person by whom that one is betrayed.
Then they began to argue among themselves as to which of them would do such a deed.
Another dispute arose among them about who would be regarded as the greatest. But Jesus said to them,
Earthly rulers domineer over their people. Those who exercise authority over them are called their benefactors. This must not happen with you. Let the greatest among you be like the youngest. Let the leader among you become the follower. For who is the greater? The one who reclines at a meal or the one who serves it? Isn't the one reclining at the table? Yet here I am among you as the one who serves you. You are the ones who have stood by me faithfully in trials. Just as God has given me dominion, so I give it to you. In my region you will eat and drink at my table, and you will sit at thrones judging the 12 tribes of Israel. Simon, Simon, Satan has demanded that you be sifted like wheat. But I prayed for you, that your faith may not fail. You in turn must give strength to your sisters and brothers.
Peter answered,
Rabbi, with you I am prepared to face imprisonment and even death.
And Jesus said to them,
When I sent you off without purse, traveling bag, or sandals, were you in need of anything?
No, nothing, they replied.
Jesus said,
Now, however, the one who has a purse had better carry it. The same with the traveling bag. And if they don't have a sword, they shall sell their cloaks and buy one. For I tell you, what was written in the scripture must be fulfilled in me. The suffering servant was counted among the criminals. For whatever refers to me must be fulfilled.
And they said,
Look, Rabbi, here are 2 swords.
Jesus answered,
That is enough.
Then Jesus went out and made his way as usual to the Mount of Olives, the disciples accompanying him. journey to Gethsemane as an insert in your bulletin. And we will sing just verse 1.
When they reached the place, Jesus said to them,
Pray that you do not be put to the test.
Then Jesus withdrew about a stone's throw from them, knelt down, and prayed.
Abba, it is your will. Take this cup from me, yet not my will, but yours be done.
When Jesus rose from the prayer, he came to the disciples and found them sleeping, exhausted with grief. And he said to them,
Why do you sleep? Wake up and pray that you will not be subjected to the trial.
While Jesus was speaking, a crowd suddenly appeared with Judas, one of the 12, at the head. Judas came over to Jesus and to embrace him. But Jesus said,
Judas, are you betraying the chosen one with a kiss?
Those who were around Jesus realized what was going to happen and said,
Rabbi,
Should we strike them with our swords?
one of them struck the attendant of the high priest, cutting off an ear. Jesus said,
Stop! No more of this! Then Jesus touched the attendant's ear and healed it.
But to those who had come out against him, the chief priests, the chiefs of the temple guard, and the elders, Jesus said,
Why do you come out with swords and clubs as I wear a robber? I was with you in the temple every day, and you could have laid hands on me anytime you wanted. But this is your hour, the triumph of darkness.
Then they arrested Jesus and led him away. And arriving at the house of the high priest, Peter followed at a distance and sat down in the midst of those who kindled a fire in the courtyard and were sitting around. And one of the high priest's attendants saw him sitting there at the fire, and she stared at him and said,
This one was with Jesus too.
But Peter denied it.
I don't know him.
A little later, someone else noticed Peter and remarked,
You're one of them too.
But Peter said,
No, I'm not.
about an hour later, someone else insisted.
Surely this fellow was with them too. He even talks like a Galilean.
Look it, I don't even know what you're talking about.
Peter said, just then. As Peter was still speaking, a rooster crowed. Jesus turned and looked at Peter. Then Peter remembered Jesus saying, Before a rooster crows today, you'll deny me 3 times. Peter went out and wept bitterly.
Meanwhile, those who held Jesus in custody were amusing themselves at his expense. They blindfolded and slapped him, and then taunted him.
Play the prophet.
which one struck you?
And they hurled many insults at him. And at daybreak the Sanhedrin, which was made up of the elders of the people, the chief priests and the religious scholars, assembled again. And once they had brought Jesus before the council, they said,
Tell us, are you the Messiah?
Jesus replied,
If I tell you, you'll not believe me. And if I question you, you won't answer. But from now on, the chosen one will have a seat at the right hand of the power of God.
Then all of them said,
So you are God's own.
Jesus answered,
Your own words have said it.
and they said,
What need do we have witnesses? We have heard it from his own mouth.
Then the whole assembly arose and led Jesus to Pilate. They began to accuse Jesus, saying,
We found this one subverting our nation, opposing the payment of taxes to Caesar,
Then Pilate reported to the chief priests and to the crowds,
I find not guilt in him.
But they insisted.
He stirs up people wherever he teaches, through the whole of the Judea, from Galilee to Jerusalem.
On hearing this, Pilate asked whether Jesus was a Galilean, and learning that Jesus was from Herod's jurisdiction, sent Jesus off to Herod, who was also in Jerusalem at this time.
Now at the sight of Jesus, Herod was very pleased. From the reports he had heard about Jesus, he had wanted for a long time to see him. Herod hoped to see Jesus perform some miracle.
Herod questions him at great length, but Jesus wouldn't answer. The chief priest and religious scholars stood there, accusing Jesus vehemently. So Herod and the soldiers treated Jesus with contempt and ridicule, putting a magnificent robe on him, and sent him back to Pilate. Herod and Pilate, who had previously been set against each other, became friends that day.
Pilate then called together the chief priests, the ruling class, and the people, and said to them,
You have brought this person before me as someone who incites people to rebellion. I have examined him in your presence and have found no basis for any charge against him arising from your allegations. Neither has Herod, for Jesus has been sent back to us. Obviously, he has done nothing to deserve death. Therefore, I will punish Jesus, but then I will release him.
Pilate was obligated to release one prisoner to the people at festival time. The whole cried out as one,
Take him away. We want Barabbas.
Barabbas had been imprisoned for starting a riot in the city and for murder. Pilate wanted to release Jesus, so he addressed them again, but they shouted back,
Crucify him! Crucify him! Yet a third time Pilate spoke to the crowd.
What wrong has this Jesus done? I found nothing that calls for death. Therefore, I'm having him flogged, and then I'll release him.
But they demanded that Jesus be crucified, and their shouts increased in volume. And Pilate decided that their demands should be met. So he released Barabbas, the one who had been in prison for rioting and murder, and Jesus was handed over to the crowd.
As they led Jesus away, they seized Simon, a Cyrene who was just coming in from the fields, and forced him to carry the cross behind Jesus. A large crowd was following, many of them women who were beating their breasts and wailing for him. At one point, Jesus turned to these women and said,
Daughters of Jerusalem, don't weep for me. Weep rather for yourselves and for your children. The time is coming when it will be said, Blessed are the childless, the wombs that have never given birth, and the breasts that have never nursed. The people will say to the mountains, Fall on us, and to the hills, Cover us up. For it is they do these things with the woods as green. What will happen when it is dry?
2 others were also led off with Jesus, criminals who were to be put to death. When they had reached the place called the Skull, they crucified Jesus there, together with the criminals, one on his right and one on his left. And Jesus said,
Abba, forgive them, for they know not what they are doing.
Then they divided his garments, rolling dice for them. The people stood there watching. The rulers, however, jeered him and said,
He saved others, let him save himself. If he really is the Messiah, God, the chosen one.
And the soldiers, they mocked him. They served Jesus sour wine and said,
If you are really the King of the Jews, save yourself.
There was an inscription above Jesus that read, "This is the King of the Jews." One of the criminals who hung there beside him insulted Jesus too, saying,
Are you really the Messiah? Then save yourself and us.
but the others answered first with a rebuke.
"Don't you even fear God? We are only paying the price for what we've done. But this one has done nothing wrong."
Then he said,
"Jesus, remember me when you come into your glory."
Jesus replied,
The truth is, today you'll be with me in paradise.
It was about noon, and darkness fell on the whole land until 3 p.m. because of the eclipse of the sun. Then the curtain in the sanctuary was torn in two, and Jesus uttered a loud cry and said,
Abba, into your hands I commit my spirit.
Saying this, Jesus breathed for the last time.
The centurion who saw this glorified God, saying,
Surely this one was innocent.
When the crowds that had gathered for the spectacle saw what had happened, they returned home beating their breasts and weeping. All the acquaintances of Jesus and the women who had come with him from Galilee stood at a distance, looking on.
There was a member of the Sanhedrin named Joseph who had not consented to their action. Joseph was from Arimathea and lived in anticipation of the reign of God. He approached Pilate and asked for the body of Jesus. Then Joseph took the body down, wrapped it in fine linen, and laid it in a tomb. cut out of the rock, where no one had ever been laid. It was preparation day, and the Sabbath was about to begin.
The women who accompanied Jesus from Galilee followed Joseph, saw the tomb, and watched as the body was placed in it. Then they went home to prepare the spices and ointments, but they rested on the Sabbath according to the law.
Well, this was an unusual presentation. This is the way Luke intended the story to be told on Palm Sunday. Reflect on the death of Jesus that is going to be celebrated tomorrow in your own way and in your own time. And then bring your alleluias and your joy on Easter morning.